They're growing. If there is an issue with our show, you can always see a recorded version without any problems on America's Voice News Network. We're a late night show there, so usually they're archived basically about a day later. But you can always go there, America's Voice News Network, which is a good place. You see our show there live on Facebook in the morning. We're streamed on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV. Download the free app of Android. We're on Dish Network, Channel 219, and the Pluto Network through America's Voice News, which, by the way, is a great place to watch all things Donald Trump, any kind of press conferences, rallies, anything that has to do with the president. You can watch it on America's Voice News Network, as well as usually streamed on our Facebook channel as well. Go to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. We also have a YouTube channel. It's John Martin Talks, spell it all the way out, and check it out. But we got a great show for you today. I hope you're able to tune in. And this is the first we're going to do takeaways from Bob Woodward's book, of Watergate fame. He's done a book. I don't think it's actually released yet, but there's been tapes of it. It's called Rage, and it is all the rage right now. And we're going to talk about some of the issues that have come out or come to light. And, of course, the media is just blasting President Trump on this, Joe Biden as well. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, we touched on this over the last week or so, but Donald Trump is taking on the military industrial complex. And one of the things he's doing is keeping a promise. Promises made, promises kept. He is bringing troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan. Imagine that. And he is catching a little bit of guff from it. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, just around the corner is the first presidential debate. And we've got an article from The Hill, an opinion piece, that basically says you need to watch this first debate because depending on the outcome, there may not be a second and third. There's supposed to be 3 debates. Both campaigns have agreed to that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But we start with Rage, the book from the upcoming book from a New York Times article. It says 5 takeaways, Bob Woodward's new book about Trump. Now, here's the thing. Let me just say this right up front. And I know a lot of you feel, especially a lot of Trump supporters, and maybe even people that hate him probably feel the same way. Why in the world would Donald Trump, now keep in mind, these interviews happened earlier this year, I think in March. And of course, the book is just now coming out. But why in the world would President Trump ever do anything with Bob Woodward? I mean, Bob Woodward's already kind of burned Trump at least one or two other times, right? So, and he is a leftist. He may not be quite as crazy as his former partner Bernstein is, of CNN fame now. But clearly Bob Woodward is not a fan of Donald Trump. So I'm with you. I question, and I don't question the president that often, but I do question when time seems right, and this seems right. I just wonder why he would give any time of day to Bob Woodward. But if you look at it, this is not an uncommon thing for President Trump to do. One thing he has pretty consistently done is he has given interviews and access to people that you kind of just scratch your head. You know that there's no way in the world they're going to treat him fairly, not even close. Yet he does this. And I think Donald Trump does it for several reasons. We're going to get into the meat of the story in just a moment, but I felt like I had to get this kind of off my chest. I think part of it is ego, to be honest with you. And you couldn't be president of the United States without some ego, let me tell you. So Donald Trump has ego. I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but I do think it plays into his ego, and he has a need to feel popular. Donald Trump has always been popular. If you think about it, before he actually ran for president, and even at the beginning of his campaign, Donald Trump has been popular. He's a major media figure, had the #1 show on TV. He's been a personality going all the way back into like the late 70s and early 80s. And I first remember Donald Trump back when I was up in New York. I mean, I've always been a fan of Donald Trump. And he is a bit, as I've said many times before, and I don't say this in a negative way, he is a bit P.T. Barnum, you know, the greatest show on earth. So I get that. I understand that. And I think Donald Trump, part of it is ego. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I also think part of it is a desire to actually be president of all the United States. And he is, of course, but I mean to everyone, to try to find a way to be the president for all Americans and not just MAGA supporters. I do believe there's some of that. Hang on a minute. I had to take a little sip, but as I say, I'm John Martin, not Dean Martin. So, you know, it's a famous diet soda I drink. I can't say, I won't say the name out loud until they pay me to, right? But back to Woodward here and Donald Trump and what his motivations are. I actually think, and I've said this before, one of the things that Donald Trump was probably a bit naive about was this idea that once he became president, you know, he had a contentious campaign, but once he was the duly elected president of the United States, which he is, snowflakes, whether you like it or not, and I'm praying and thinking that he's going to be 4 more years. Again, did you see where Biden gave a speech yesterday and he was greeted by 4 more years? Had more Trump supporters than it did Biden supporters. Anyway, I digress. I do that from time. I believe when he entered into the White House, when he won the election, I think he sincerely believed that he could work with the Democrats and the progressives and the liberals and people like Bob Woodward. I do believe he honestly believed that. And he had good reason to actually believe that, in spite of all the things they said about him leading up to the actual election day. If you go back over his history, Donald Trump has had big appeal among liberals. He's gotten, you know, before he was the worst racist ever, and I say that because he is, he's the worst racist to ever occupy the White House because he sucks at it. If you look at it, he must not have read the Clucker handbook or know the sign, whatever that's supposed, the bird whistle, because he sucks at it. He's done more, as he says, and he's right, for African Americans basically than any other president before Lincoln. And I think he's absolutely right about that. That's why I say he sucks. He's worse because he sucks at it. But if you look at it, the liberals gave him awards. He was the toast of Hollywood, all that kind of thing. He ran with the lifestyles and the rich and famous. A lot of the people who are bashing him now couldn't wait to hang out with him at Mar-a-Lago, like, what is it, Morning Schmo Joe and Mika Brzezinski. They used to fawn over to the dude. So Donald Trump had every reason to believe that the Democrats would work for him once he won. And I think he was a bit naive about this because pretty obvious they've been trying to impeach him since before he was sworn in. So, you know, I do think that part of the reason why he talks to people like a Bob Woodward is all of that kind of things. But I still think it's a mistake. But at the end of the day, the president has been right pretty much all the time. So who am I to actually question him? But I do. I question what would be the benefit, because I don't see that there is one. He'd have a lot more benefit being interviewed by me and Billy Bob. If you hadn't met my psychic sidekick, this is Billy Bob Bass. He's got a Twitter handle. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. And that's another place you can see our videos. Sometimes they lag a day or so because my Cracker Jack staff, which is mainly when it comes to that, sometimes is not on the ball. But let's get on with this article. Billy Bob, as always, tells me to get on with it, boy. This is deadly stuff, President Trump said of the coronavirus on February 7th interview with journalist Bob Woodward for his upcoming book, Rage. But it was a vastly different story than he was telling the public at the time. I don't know if I agree with that. Mr. Trump would later admit to publicly he wanted to always play down the severity of the virus. And I obviously hadn't read the book. It's not out yet, but I've heard the tapes that have been released, or at least a certain portion of it. And Donald Trump, he did downplay the virus to a certain extent, and he did admit in these tapes that he did it because he didn't want to actually stir panic. And Donald Trump, if you go back and listen to the things he was saying about the virus early on, mostly he didn't downplay it in the sense that he said it wasn't serious. He talked about hope that it would pass quickly, hope that we could not only not shut down, but when we did shut down, reopen quickly. those kind of things. He was all about talking about hope. But if you actually look at his actions, he was the first world leader to recognize that the source for this virus, and he took steps January 31st, and we're going to go through the timeline more in just a moment. But January 31st, he shut down our borders to any incoming flights from China. The first world leader to really do that. And, you know, he was called everything but a child of God about it. Back to the story here. Mr. Woodward conducted 18 interviews. Man, that seems like a lot, doesn't it? With the president for the book. Think about this. Donald Trump, by far, is the most transparent president I can ever remember. I mean, this guy is out there everywhere, gives interviews off the cuff, certainly organized ones, give an interview, as I say, I'm not sure why, to Bob Woodward. I mean, he's the only president I've seen that routinely answers what I call the shouting line, where he's walking out of the White House to get on Marine One or get in a limo, and they're shouting questions at him. Donald Trump's liable to just stop. And I can tell you, any kind of press agent or any kind of staffer, chief of staff, they got to cringe at this kind of stuff. Of course, they're used to it by now with Donald Trump. But presidents don't do that. They're too presidential. Donald Trump does it on a routine basis. And, you know, we're going to talk about debates in a minute, but to talk about debate prep, what helps you more in debate prep than answering reporters' shouted out questions, man? But Woodward conducted 18 interviews with the president for the book, which goes on sale next week. And I'm not rushing to buy it. Mr. Trump also granted Mr. Woodward access to top officials inside the White House, revealing the inner workings of the president and his administration. About as transparent as you could be. Here are 5 takeaways from the New York Times. The first one, Mr. Trump minimized the risk of the coronavirus to the American public early in the year. That's what the Times is saying. Mr. Trump told Mr. Woodward on March 19th, I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic. And, you know, I could see why there's some criticism for the president at that point, but I think it was more about what he said, not creating a panic. And if you look at his actions, he took this virus serious from day one. Many of the Democratic leaders and the press actually did not, but they never want to do that. I got a meme, I will put it up right now, that kind of shows you the political, if you want to call it that, coronavirus timeline. The first thing, if we can get that up, the first thing I want, 31st, before any leader in the world, really, China did it themselves, Trump bans flights from China right off the bat. That was a huge deal. And we'll never know how many lives he potentially saved from that, right? Of course, Biden in his thing the other day yesterday said that, when this came out, that Biden, that if Trump, and they never say without evidence when it comes to somebody like Joe Biden, but Biden actually came out and went through a list. He said if he'd acted a week sooner, he'd have saved 5,000 lives. I'm paraphrasing now. And then he said if he'd have acted 2 weeks sooner, he'd have saved, without any evidence of that whatsoever. And the press never questions him on that. But Trump fired the first shot really in the world about the coronavirus on January 31st. And there's multiple examples of these other things. We're just hitting some of the highlights or lowlights depending on it. But February 5th, the Democrats, including led by Chuck Schumer, when Trump, so basically a week after he did his travel ban from China, they said that President Donald Trump, his travel ban, his flight ban, was an example of war on immigrants. Because remember, before the pandemic, borders didn't matter, right? Like Antifa, no borders, no walls, no USA at all. Keep that in mind because I think that's true. If we don't have borders or walls, no USA at all. But borders all of a sudden matter, don't they? Every country now is concerned about its borders, which they always should be. I mean, a country without borders is no country at all and won't last very long. But the Democrats were accusing Trump of xenophobia, right? Racism, anti-Muslim, anti-this, anti-that. I mean, Donald Trump tries to protect the United States of America and its citizens, which is his first duty, by the way, his sworn duty. But it was a war against immigrants on February 5th. February 24th, Pelosi, Yeah, old barbershop Pelosi or whatever, beautician Pelosi. She literally is in San Francisco, her home district, telling people, oh man, you need to go to Chinatown. You know, which if you think about it, it's kind of racist, isn't it? It implies that somehow it's all about the Chinese and go hug a Chinese. I mean, to me, that in and of itself is a racist comment. But she tells people, oh, you need to go party like it's 1999 in Chinatown. Nothing to see here. And then, of course, on March 13th, New York, which became the epicenter for the disease, you remember Cuomo actually said that calling the China virus was racist because it came to New York via Europe. I mean, think about the dumbness of that. It came from Europe, yeah, to New York, but it came from Europe via China. I mean, no one really disputes. But he's quite the leader, right? Everybody's talking about how great he was, man, except unless you want your grandma to live, maybe. But de Blasio, Comrade de Blasio, the mayor of New York, he literally and a bunch of his health officials said everything is fine on March 13th, for God's sakes, telling you to ride the subway, public transportation, no big deal, get out and party and visit Chinatown there and go to theaters. I mean, and by this time, which is March 13th, people were beginning to realize that this thing was pretty serious, and always knew it was. But I just wanted to point that out. April, as he began to urge the country, talking about President Trump in April, as he began to urge the country to reopen, this is according to the Times, Mr. Trump told Mr. Woodward of the virus is so easily transmissible, you wouldn't even believe it. So they're implying here that he's telling Woodward that this thing is real and serious and easily transmissible. And they're saying, yet he was telling the public not to worry about it. I'm not so sure I agree with that. I mean, I do agree that President Trump did try to minimize things, but I take him at his word. It was about panic. And if you look at what he was actually doing, I think there's another way to read this. Think about this. If President Trump, and he did, you can hear his own words telling Woodward this. If he really believed that this thing was easily transmittable through air, then why would he not wear a mask himself? Doesn't it imply, I know the media and you hardcore leftists and you snowflakes out there would say, oh, well, it just shows how dumb he is. But Donald Trump is a germaphobe, right? I mean, that's one of the things he's been accused of. He cans and all that kind of stuff. Donald Trump is a social distance guy long before social distancing was happening, right? But so you can't have it both ways. So if Donald Trump is a germaphobe, and I think that's probably to a certain extent true, he's certainly more in tune to it than the average person. And he knew for a fact that this virus was easily transmittable by air, then don't you think him not wearing a mask was an act of courage in and of itself? And what he was trying to show the American people is, hey, we're going to face this. I mean, there's a couple of ways you could read this, but the media is definitely never going to read it that way. They're always going to read it in the negative way that Donald Trump's a buffoon. He is downplaying the virus and all that. I don't see it that way. Now, I admit that I might be biased. I'm telling you, I do like Donald Trump. I told you yesterday, I got some man crush on the guy. I love a lot of what they're talking about and condemning him here. I actually love. Some of us are sicker than others, maybe. I don't know. But chime in on Facebook and tell me where I'm wrong. Wherever you're watching, YouTube as well, John Martin Talk, spell it out. Tell me where I'm wrong. I'll get as I possibly can. I think there's other ways to look at this. But here's something the media never wants to show you. Who else at this timeline, going back to this time that Donald Trump was supposedly downplaying the virus, who else, a major figure, at least right now, who was saying there's nothing to worry about, no reason to panic, and listing his own prowess as a fighter, telling you, the American people, of course, very few people probably heard it, but you're going to hear it right now. There was a guy out there who was telling you, nothing to see here, move along, no reason to panic. Check it out.
Barack and I, when we were as president and vice president, we took on the virus that was threatening all of Africa and the rest of the world. And we set up a mechanism that worked. But I want to take a moment to say it's not a time to panic about coronavirus, but coronavirus is a serious public health challenge.
That's good enough. No time to panic, right? But now Joe is out there saying, oh, Trump cost hundreds of thousands of lives because he didn't respond to it quick enough. And Joe was one of the people that said that Donald Trump was being racist for closing the border with no evidence, right? So what would a Biden have done? Not much, it doesn't sound like. But there's another video I'm going to play here in a minute. You've seen it before, probably, certainly if you've been tuned to my show. If you're new to the show, first of all, welcome. Glad to have you. Secondly, where you been? But you're in the right place now. The truth starts now. And if you're new to the show, let me mention my sponsor here. We're in Big Daddy Unlimited Studios, otherwise known as BDU. We broadcast from our hidden bunker in Gainesville, Florida. And if you want to help support the show, and a lot of people have asked how, and there's going to be multiple ways, but one way right now, beyond liking, sharing it, and everything else, and we need to do that far and wide, is to go to our sponsorship link. All you got to do is look in the description of our show. It doesn't matter what platform you're watching. If you look above the video, there's going to be a description to the show. And in that, you'll find a link, a sponsorship link. You click on that to Big Daddy Unlimited. It's called BDU. And for 99-cent, virtually free 1-month trial, you can check out anything that has to do with the Second Amendment, from guns and ammunition to swag to tactical gear, thousands of products delivered directly to your home at factory direct pricing. If you like what you see there, then after the 1-month free trial, you can cancel it anytime. It's $10 a month, and there are actually some specials if you commit to longer periods of time, cheaper way. But basically, it's $10 a month, and I get $4. The show gets $4 out of that, and we're using that money. I guarantee you, I'm not going to Tahiti with it. We're using it to expand and improve the show. That's our goal right there. But we could use your help. As I tell you, not everybody can be a fighter like me and Billy Bob, but everybody can support fighters, and we really appreciate that. But let me ask you this. If this virus is so bad, think about this. Back when Trump was being interviewed by Bob Woodward, we were just learning, and even our government was really just learning about the potential calamity of the pandemic, or pandemic, as they call it, of the coronavirus, right? It was kind of new to the scene, even though there's evidence that it may have been here the year before. But that aside, we were new to it. There was a lot of misinformation coming out. It wasn't coming from Trump, it's coming from China and the World Health Organization. But it was new, right? This interview, there were a lot of unknowns, right? But now, fast forward to like a week ago, and you'll see why I'm saying this when we play this video. We know a lot more about the virus, right? We know that, for instance, that children are not impacted. The younger you are, the less impact. The healthier you are, the less impact. The older you are, the more impact. So someone who's 80 years old and probably an alcoholic, or not necessarily in the best health, probably shouldn't necessarily leave the house, let alone not wear a mask, right? That kind of thing. So here we have one of the leaders, or the leader of the Democratic Party, the highest ranking member of the Democratic Party, and God help us, third in line to the presidency. Well, you know who I'm talking about. There's no audio to it. Let's play this video of one Nancy Pelosi, and notice, you could make a case of whether she didn't know about going in this beauty parlor or not, but she knows better than not to wear a mask. At least she wants you to wear a mask. So this is an 80-year-old person. I want you to check out this while you're looking at this video. Think about this. This is an 80-year-old person, not necessarily in the best health, that should know as much as anyone could publicly know, and a lot more than the average citizen would know because they have access to all this information, and chooses in public not to wear a mask. Check it out. And there she goes, old Nancy Pelosi. going in and having herself a blow dry, which is illegal in California right now, by the way. But, what is a little communist? I'm always telling you, if you're going to be a communist leader, the thing you have to master is to be able to look at your constituents in the face, look at the camera in the face, and basically tell them, do as I say, don't worry about what I do. And that's what's definitely every leader in the Democratic Party is. But no mask. And as I remind you, this is someone who has access to information that you and I don't have, that is in the high-risk category and chooses not to wear a mask in public, but wants, or in private there where she's potentially exposed, but wants you to wear a mask. And on a side note, I was watching Tucker Carlson last night. I always got to give him credit. He's one of my heroes, and I'm assuming yours too. Hopefully JMT and Billy Bob are kind of becoming Batman and Robin to you a little bit as well. But Tucker Carlson had the lady that owned that, the beautician, the lady that owned that beauty parlor, and she essentially said she's got to have to shut down and leave San Francisco after being there for over a decade because she just can't open the business. She's afraid to go back to it, which is a sad thing, man. Back to this article. Two of the presidents, this is a takeaways from the New York Times of the Woodward book, if you're just tuning in. Two of the president's top officials thought he was dangerous and considered speaking out publicly. So this is another one of the takeaways. General Jim Mattis, Mad Dog, right? Mr. Trump's former defense secretary is quoted describing Mr. Trump as dangerous and unfit for the presidency in a conversation with Dan Coats, the director of the National Intelligence at the time. Mr. Coats himself was haunted, really haunted, by the president's Twitter feed and imagine being haunted by the president. Oh my God, here comes Twitter. I guess it's that substitute for Halloween now. We'll have a new movie instead of like Halloween 20, be Twitter. But Mr. President's Twitter feed and believed that Mr. Trump's gentle approach to Russia, keep that in mind, gentle approach to Russia, reflected something more sinister, perhaps, that Moscow had something on the president. Something on the president. I mean, give me a break, man. What is it, the Moscow Project, where he was trying to build a hotel in Moscow? What a big secret. Donald Trump wants to build big hotels in every major city in the world. There's a breaking news event for you. But let me tell you, this idea that he was soft on Russia, tell that to the dead Russians in Syria that Donald Trump ordered bomb, what he sent like 50 or 60 missiles to a site that actually killed Russian soldiers in Syria. Probably the first time in a long time that we've actually actively killed Russian soldiers, knowingly killed them, maybe by accident, whatever. And that's soft? God, if that's soft, man, then, wow, I don't know. You think Biden would have done something like that? And I'm not even advocating that Donald Trump was right to do it one way or another, but he did it. He sent missiles into an area that he knew that Russian soldiers were there, and they were killed. I don't think that's very soft. That's not my definition of soft. And there's other evidences that he's not soft. But Mr. Mattis told Mr. Coates in May 2019, according to the book, maybe at some point, this is what Mattis is supposed to be saying, Mattis, whatever. Maybe at some point we're going to have to stand up and speak out. There may be a time when we have to take collective action. So these guys are supposedly talking about they got to take the president out. So much for saving democracy, I guess. But, the thing is, see what our president has been up to. And I said he's our president. And, God help us if Biden actually gets elected, he'd be my president. I wouldn't necessarily like it when support it. Progresso world is upon us. And let me tell you, you're not going to like it if it hits you. We got to stop it from happening. We got, about 50 some days to stop it from happening. But if Biden were to get elected, he would be my president. Don't mean I like it, but he would be. But our president, Donald Trump, has been up against it literally from day one. First of all, they mocked him, didn't take him serious. Then when they took him serious, they called him everything but a child of God, tried to prevent him. They being the mainstream media, actually built up people like Jeb Bush, who they formerly hated, by the way, and that kind of thing. It's just unbelievable. And then once he got the nomination, they basically called him everything but a child of God. They started investigating, the swamp did, And they were trying to impeach the dude before he ever even took office. And now, the military talking about trying to take him out. Donald Trump has been up against it from day one. What is the common thing that all these people had? Those of you who been tuned into the show will know the answer to this question. But what links all these people together, from the never Trumpers to the mainstream media to the swamp rats on both sides of the aisle? And to these generals? There's your clue. What links them all together? Military. Ching-a-ling-a-ling, man. That's what links them all together. Eisenhower's warning to us has come true and is coming true. And the only major figure in the world that is standing up against the military and industrial complex, which is literally worldwide, is none other than Donald J. Trump, man. He's shown a lot of courage. But it says here, ultimately, neither of these officials, Mattis or Coates, spoke out. No, they didn't speak out. They cashed in. They wrote books and all this kind of, they're cashing in on the Trumpster. Instead of doing their patriotic duty and calling Donald Trump out, they waited till they were out of office or out of their positions, and then they wrote a book and made money. Yeah, Donald Trump, man, is helping the economy of even people that are his enemies, man. That's what it is about Trump I love, too. He just wants everybody to be fat and happy. Mr. Trump repeatedly denigrated, this is another one of the points, the takeaways, Mr. Trump, military and top generals. That is misleading right there. Because Donald Trump, he has been denigrating the top brass, which is otherwise known as the swamp rats. Because keep this in mind, there is no deeper, nastier part of the swamp than the Pentagon and the top brass. You don't think the military, and I'm not denigrating our troops. I'm like Trump. I'm all for the troops. But you don't think that and I'm not painting everybody with this brush, but if you want to see the deepest part of the swamp, it is the military industrial complex, and the Pentagon is right in the middle of it. Look at how many of these ex-generals immediately cash in on some kind of weapons deal. They just all do. So Donald Trump, though I say it's misleading, and President Trump spoke to this just yesterday, I think, or day before. He said that, the troops love me, not so much the top guys up there. Mr. Woodward quoted Mr. Trump denigrating senior American military officials to his trade advisor, Peter Navarro, who I'm a big fan of, during a 2017 meeting. The president, in these tapes, said they care more, talking about these top brass generals, more about their alliances than they do about trade deals. Absolutely true. 100% true. The president, like I said, he just said even more than this. So he's not. There's no big revelation in this. Donald Trump has been opposed to the military-industrial complex, which includes the upper brass, the establishment, as I say, the deepest part of the swamp, the Pentagon, from day one. He campaigned that way. Promises made, promises kept. So this is not a big revelation. In fact, as I said, Donald Trump just basically doubled down on that in public in a speech, and I think he's courageous for it. I talked about that. Go back and look at the podcast of our show about the military-industrial complex, and you'll see, I think Donald Trump is taking on things, and at risk of his person as well, because these people don't like to give up their ching-a-ling, man. But listen to this next paragraph. This next paragraph is why some of us love Donald Trump and why others don't understand our love for President Trump. But let me tell you, if you love President Donald Trump, then listen to this paragraph. In a discussion with Mr. Woodward, Mr. Trump called the U.S. military suckers for paying extensive costs to protect South Korea. So he's not calling the troops suckers. He's not denigrating the troops. He's talking about the strategy to basically keep the demilitarized zone going and protecting South Korea. He's not even opposed to protecting South Korea, but he's just he's calling it like it is. Mr. Woodward wrote that he was stunned, I tell you, when the president said of South Korea, we're defending you, we're allowing you to exist, and implying that they're not paying their fair share, basically. I say, Yes, man. Yeah, I'm not stunned, man. Are you stunned? I'm not stunned. You know what? I'm overjoyed that we finally have a president that is willing to call it like it is and not just, be all presidential and not say all, but to tell the American people and the world that, hey, you got to live up to your agreements. The day of us being the world's piggy bank and just sacrificing our blood and treasure for your safety without any kickback from you to us is over. It's over. And of course, if we don't reelect Donald Trump, it only begins again because the swamp, man, is ever trying to grow back. And it ain't drained yet. Mr. Woodward also reports that Mr. Trump chewed out Mr. Coates after briefing with reporters about the threat that Russia presented to the nation's election systems. Mr. Coates had gone further than he and the president had discussed beforehand. So the president's admitting that he talked to the dude, told him, because he works for him, it's okay for the president to say, here, this is what you need to talk about. Don't do it that way. I mean, the president is the commander in chief. You either serve him loyally or you get the heck out. I'm not saying you have to do everything he says, but if you're going to work for him, you do, right? I mean, come on. The boss is the boss, and he's the ultimate boss, right? But this idea that Russia is the reason why Donald Trump is in office is 100% ridiculous BS. Yeah, I said it is. And I'm going to show you a video in just a minute that shows you just how ludicrous this idea is. But the left, the media, the progressive left, and the never Trumpers want you to buy this story that in like 2016, in places like Florida, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, or any of these swing states, supposedly, I think Donald Trump's going to win them all, by the way, if we do our part, which is what? Campaign. You may be new to the show. Let me just get this out there. We have to campaign for the president like he's 2 votes behind, and the next 2 people you see going to put him over the top because Donald Trump is going to do his part. He's the hardest working guy I've ever seen when it comes to campaigning and actually being president. I mean, some of these things he was talking to Woodward about were like in the wee hours of the morning, that kind of thing. So Donald Trump is a machine, man. So he's going to do his part. We need to do our part. But they had this idea that somewhere in a basement in Pennsylvania, there was a guy or a gal wearing a Hillary hat and was typing and playing some kind of video games and eating Hot Pockets or whatever. And all of a sudden, something came from Google or Facebook, a Russian ad, and they went from I'm with her with a Prius outside that had an I'm with her bumper sticker on it and doing all that to all of a sudden they saw some Russian ad and they went, MAGA, MAGA, threw away the Hillary hat, burned the Prius and put on a MAGA hat and voted for Trump. I mean, all because of that. Now, we do know for a fact that Russia tried to influence. It's an oldie but a goodie. This is the CEO, the head honcho of Google, testifying before the one and only great Jerry Nadler a couple years ago when Nadler asked him about Russian expenditures and influence of Google, the 2016 campaign through Google. Check it out.
Thank you. Now, according to media reports, Google found evidence that Russian agents spent thousands of dollars ads on its advertising platforms that span multiple Google products as part of the Russian agents' campaign to interfere in the election 2 years ago. Additionally, Juniper Downs, head of global policy for YouTube, testified in July that YouTube had identified and shut down multiple channels containing thousands of videos associated with the Russian misinformation campaign. Does Google now know the full extent to which its online platforms were exploited by Russian actors in the election 2 years ago?
We have, we undertook a very thorough investigation, and in 2016, we now know that there were 2 main ad accounts linked to Russia, which advertised on Google for about $4,700 in advertising. We also found other limited...
Total of $4,700?
That's right. Which was, no amount is okay here, but, we found limited activity.
That's good enough. $4,700, man. Think about that. They're saying they spent in 2 accounts $4,700. So what, like $2,300 per account, $2,350. I mean, Come on, man. If I thought I could buy the election for $5,000, I'd outbid Google right now. And I don't have $5,000. Maybe I'm sure we could do something between all of us and come up with $5,000 to buy this election. We'll buy out Google for $5,000, man. I mean, it's the ridiculousness of this idea that Russia is the reason why Donald Trump is there. And this is another thing I'd like to hear on Facebook or YouTube, whichever you want to leave me a message on. John Martin Talks, but all the way out on YouTube. Give me one example of someone that was a Hillary supporter that saw something that Russia put out there on Facebook or Google, because Facebook said they spent like $100,000 on that actually changed your vote. Do you really? And even you people out there that are like hiding Biden supporters right now, or you were Hillary supporter or Bernie bros or whatever, do you really believe that the election, and you heard from Google, I mean, it doesn't everybody love Google? All you snowflakes do, I know. They spent $4,700. So let's assume that what the Google guy was saying is true and what Zuckerberg said was true, that they found basically $100K. So you're talking $4,700. Do you honestly believe that was the difference in the reason why Donald Trump is in the White House? Really? If you do, that probably explains why you're backing Biden, man. But I want to tell you too, I'm going to go ahead and announce this. We're going to finish out with this article because I think this Woodward book is all the rage, and it's going to be for a couple of weeks, maybe. And I think it's important. And there's a couple other stories about debate and some other things I'll probably get to tomorrow. So if you're tuned in for that, stay tuned because you're going to like this as well. When asked about the pain, this is another one of the takeaways. When asked about the pain black people feel in this country, Mr. Trump was unable to express empathy. That's nonsense. It's misleading again. And I want to play you this. You're only going to hear the sound bites of this. This is Donald Trump, and it is him, he doesn't deny it, talking to Bob Woodward on tapes about white privilege. Listen to the question. It's like a minute long that Woodward asks him about white privilege, and then President Trump's response, because this is the thing they're saying that shows that Donald Trump doesn't care about black folks. Check it out.
Woodward Trump interview. This is on race and self-awareness. We'll discuss on the other side.
Do you have any sense that privilege has isolated and put you in a cave to a certain extent, as it put me and I think lots of white privileged people in a cave, and that we have to work our way out of it to understand the anger and the pain particularly black people feel in this country?
No, you really drank the Kool-Aid, didn't you? You listened to you. Wow. No, I don't feel that at all.
See, that's good enough. I love Donald Trump, man. He just tells it like it is in that tape. That's the real Donald Trump. And he's not trying to back away from it. He's not going to apologize and all that kind of, like, he's not going to do a Jesse Jackson apologize. If you South Park fans know what I'm talking about. If you're not, check it out. It's pretty funny. But Donald Trump's not going to do that because he doesn't feel that way. You know, people don't understand Donald Trump. Let me explain something to you about Donald Trump. And I've said this before, but as I say, it bears repeating. There's certain things once you understand about a person, you know, you look at decisions they make, and if you don't understand the core of them, sometimes they don't make sense. I think I got a pretty good grasp of the core of the man, Donald Trump. And I think if you accept this, it'll make a lot of things clear. A lot of you people who don't understand why some of us support Donald Trump and love him and all that kind of stuff, maybe if you understood this, you'd understand people like me. I believe at Donald's core, he is, and this is very obvious, a businessman, right? So he believes in making money and profit. You got to make money to stay in business. And Donald Trump basically believes that if you have money in your pocket, in other words, your lifestyle, we were talking about lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. If you got money in your pocket and your bills are paid, you got ching-a-ling, extra change in your pocket, that all this other stuff you can figure out on your own. You don't need him to tell you who to sleep with. You don't need him to tell you what church or synagogue or mosque or believe or not believe. You don't need him to tell you about it. You can figure it out yourself. That he believes that if he can provide an atmosphere where you can get fat and happy, then you'll be just that. The pursuit of happiness is a big deal for Donald Trump. Life, liberty, and the pursuit, not the guarantee of happiness. I believe Donald Trump firmly believes that, and I think he believes that the best way for you to be all you can be as an American citizen is to have money in your pocket. You figure all the rest of that out yourself. He doesn't have white privilege. And let me just tell you for the record, I'm not going to apologize for anything. I don't owe anybody but my family, which is a pretty mixed bag. I don't owe anybody anything. And nobody owes me, conversely, anything either. You don't owe anything. You know, I hope you'll like and share that. I hope you'll go to our Big Daddy Unlimited sponsorship link and chime in on it. But you don't owe me that. I just hope you do. You know, I keep hope alive. But this idea, I mean, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, and statistics sometimes matter and they don't. And I'm not saying, and let me just say this before I finish. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is you can't legislate what's in a man's heart. You can pass all the rules and laws you want. You're not going to change what's in a person's heart. Only time, work by that person, and the grace of God can do that. I think we've eliminated systematic racism. It's not institutionalized anymore. Am I saying there aren't people in the government that are racist? No. But in large part, in the United States of America, if you do the right thing, even the blacks supposedly being preyed on by white cops, if you don't resist arrest, I haven't seen a time when someone didn't get a resist arrest that got shot. I'm just saying. But I don't believe I have anything to apologize for. The reality is, and this is a shock to a lot of people, do you know that there's twice as many white Americans living in poverty than there are black Americans? Twice as many, if not more. Check it out yourself. But there's a higher percentage of black people. The problem is not racism in these things, it's socioeconomics. And President Trump gets that. And I go back to it, and I'll say it one more time. To understand President Trump, you have to understand he's a businessman, and he believes if you got money in your pocket, you can figure all this other stuff out. We're going to have to leave it at there. I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page. You pray for mine, but above all else, let's all pray for this great nation, and keep in mind what I say each and every day. From my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.